guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm sharing another shelf cooking video. So I am shelf cooking this week. We are working on a tight budget, but that does not mean that these meals are not delicious. They are amazing. They are things that I already had in my home. We are cooking out of the fridge, the freezer, the pantry, using up things that we already have in our house and trying not to buy extra things from the store. So if you're interested, make sure you stay tuned because we are going to get into all of those recipes. For this dinner, I'm making some cheeseburger sliders, and I've actually made these a couple times since I first made this recipe, and they are so delicious. I'm starting off with a pound of some lean ground beef, and then I'm adding in one small onion that I diced up into some really fine pieces. You definitely want the onions to be really finely diced for this one. And then I'm just going to brown the ground beef all together, cook it until it's cooked through, and then we're going to add in our seasonings and our sauces. So I'm just adding in a little bit of steak seasoning, probably like a 1/4 teaspoon, a little bit of garlic salt. Don't do too much because you don't want it to be too salty. And then you're going to do about a teaspoon of some Worcestershire sauce, along with about 1.5 tablespoons of mustard. If you don't like mustard, go ahead and add just a little bit less, but we love mustard in our house, so I added in 1.5 tablespoons. And then I also added in 3 tablespoons of ketchup. I let this simmer on the stove for probably like 5 minutes or so, just while my oven was preheating and while I was getting my buns ready. Just get all of that warmed up, and then into a 9x13 dish here, I just added in a little bit of aluminum foil. You are going to want to make this a really long piece so you can fold it over and make it into a pocket later on. I just sprayed some avocado oil on there, and then I threw in my buns. I did use regular hamburger buns for this, but you can definitely use these sliders if you want to. I just wanted ours to be full-size burgers, plus this is already what I had on hand because remember, we are shelf cooking this week, so I'm using things up that I already had in my home. I had these left over from the week before and I wanted to get them used up, so then I'm just taking that meat, spreading it around there, topping it with some cheddar cheese. You can use slices or you can use shredded like I did, totally personal preference here. And then you are going to take the top of the buns, pop those right back on there, and then for the top, I just melted a little bit of butter in the microwave, melted, spread it over the buns. This will make them super delicious. They are a little bit messy with the butter on them, but oh my goodness, you guys, they are so good. I just did the tiniest little bit of garlic salt on there with some sesame seeds, and then I threw these in the oven at 350 degrees for about 20 minutes. As you can see here, I am making kind of a pocket. So tuck in the edges, make a little pocket with your aluminum foil, put those in the oven, and you guys, these are so good. Like I said, I've actually made them a couple times now. They're delicious, totally a hit in our house. I think you guys will love this one. Next up, I am making a chicken Parmesan, and this is going to be a little bit healthier just because it is a baked version instead of being fried. So into my bowl here, I'm adding in 2 cups of some Italian panko breadcrumbs. You can use regular, but I really do prefer Italian for this one. And then I also added in a cup of grated Parmesan cheese. Dump that in there. For seasonings, I've got 2 heaping tablespoons of dried parsley, 2 teaspoons of salt, and then 1 teaspoon of just black pepper. And then I'm just mixing all of that together. This is going to be the delicious coating for our chicken Parmesan. I love this coating. I've been using the same recipe for years and it's just absolutely delicious. Into another bowl here, I'm just cracking in about 4 eggs, a splash of milk in there, and then just whisking all of that together. This is going to be the liquid that we put on our chicken to coat it. And then into a separate dish here, I'm just adding in some flour. No need to measure here, just dump some flour in there. And then we are going to get to coating our chicken. So I take chicken breasts, I cut them in half so they're really nice and thin, and then you're going to dip the chicken in the flour, then into the egg mixture, and then finally into that panko breadcrumb mixture. You do want a nice thick coating on there. This is going to be so delicious. I love this chicken recipe. It comes out nice and crispy in the oven. You just want to spray it with a little bit of oil, and then I bake this at 400 degrees for about, I would say I bake mine for usually right around that 25-minute mark, but you want to make sure to temp your chicken until it reaches 165 degrees, and then once it has reached that set point, I will add the marinara sauce at that point. I am using Rao's on this particular night, but obviously this is a more expensive sauce. You can totally use a cheaper marinara and it's totally fine. And then I'm just adding on some mozzarella. And then I just put this back in the oven for probably another like 3 to 4 minutes, just until that cheese was all melted. I did leave some of the chicken plain for my kids for the next day for lunches, which is super easy to do, but you guys have definitely got to try this one. It is a family favorite for sure. So on this night, I am making some family-friendly enchiladas. Now this is going to be a little bit different than a traditional enchilada, but these are very family-friendly and I think your kids will like them. I know my kids really did and my husband did as well. So I just heated up some olive oil in my pan here. I added in a little bit of onion, probably like a quarter of an onion, and then I had about half of a pepper I just needed to get used up. And I'm just getting these peppers and onions softened. I probably cooked them for about 5 minutes, and then I'm adding in my rice here. So this is 1.5 cups of uncooked white rice. And I just added that in there until they started to brown a little bit. And then I'm adding in my seasonings. So I've got a teaspoon of garlic salt, a teaspoon of cumin, and then I also have a cup of chunky salsa. And then I'm adding in the broth as well. This is 2 cups of chicken broth. And I'm just gonna get this rice cooked up on my stove. And then we're gonna have some rice in our enchiladas. While the rice was cooking, I am making an enchilada sauce because I did not have any and I'm using everything up from my pantry. So I've got some oil here. I have 3 tablespoons of olive oil that I heated up, and then I'm adding in a 1/3 cup of tomato paste, a 1/4 cup of flour, and then for seasonings, you're gonna want 2 teaspoons of cumin, 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder and onion powder, and they're also gonna want a 1/4 teaspoon of chili powder. Get all of that whisked together. It's gonna be a really thick, pasty mixture, and then you're gonna want to add in 3 cups of either vegetable broth or chicken broth. Mix that in, let it thicken up until you get that desired thickness. This was so easy. I think I will never buy enchilada sauce from the store again because enchilada sauce can actually be pretty expensive, and I'm sure it has other nasty ingredients in it anyway. So it's healthier for you and it's way cheaper to make it from home. I did add a little bit of salt and pepper at the end because the recipe did not call for any other than to taste. So I did do that to taste. This is the rice once it was done cooking. I'm just getting that mixed together, and we're actually going to be putting a little bit of the rice in the enchiladas. That is what makes these, I think, so kid-friendly over other enchilada recipes. So I don't know, I definitely really enjoyed both this enchilada sauce and this Spanish rice recipe. I only ended up using about half of the Spanish rice, so I just set the other little bit aside and I let it cool off and popped it into my freezer. So I have about half of that rice mixture in here. I added in 1 pound of slim lean ground beef. I had already cooked this into taco meat here. So I already have taco seasoning on this ground beef that you're seeing. So I'm just letting this warm through with the rice. Now it's time to assemble our enchiladas, and yes, I know these are not a traditional enchilada. This is actually a recipe that I got from my sister, and I think it's so delicious, kid-friendly. I think you guys are gonna love this, especially if you have kids, or if you just don't like kind of a soggy enchilada. Like, we don't like them soggy, we like them on the drier side, but I'm just taking that meat and rice mixture, scooping it in there with just a drizzle of that sauce on there, rolling these up, and then at the end we are gonna top them with some enchilada sauce, and of course some cheese too. So you can make as many as you want. I did have some leftovers of the rice and the meat mixture, and even just eating that plain the next day for lunch warmed up as leftovers was absolutely delicious. So you could totally skip the tortilla and just make this as kind of like a rice hot dish or casserole, if you will. But this was definitely a hit in our house. I will definitely be making these again. Definitely try this one out, but I just topped that with more enchilada sauce, and I did have probably half of this enchilada sauce left over. I just stuck it in the fridge, so the next time that I make enchiladas, I will have that ready to go. I topped this with some cheese, and then I just baked this at 350 degrees for about 15 to 20 minutes. Like I said, these are not soggy enchiladas. Like a lot of times when you get a traditional enchilada, they're kind of on like the mushy or soggy side. These are not at all. I just topped them with some fresh veggies and sour cream. You will love these. I think you will absolutely love them. For this next dinner, I am making a buffalo chicken pizza, and this was my husband's request, and it worked out perfect because I actually had some buffalo chicken in the freezer. But I am going to be starting off by making pizza dough. I make this KitchenAid pizza dough from scratch. It's so easy. You're just going to want about 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast. You're going to add in a cup of warm water. I let that sit for about 5 minutes, and then I'm adding in 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 2 teaspoons of oil, and then you're going to add anywhere from 2 1/2 cups to 3 1/2 cups of flour. If you have made dough before, you know the texture that you're gonna want. You want it to be a little bit like bouncy, like when you touch it with your finger, you don't want your finger to stick to it. Otherwise, you're gonna need to add in a little bit more flour. It's hard to explain, but if you have made any sort of dough before, it's just that same consistency you see here. That is what you want it to look like. And then I just put it into an oiled bowl, coat the whole surface of the dough in oil, cover it up with a towel. I let this rise for about an hour, and then I'm ready to make our pizza dough. It's super quick and easy. This is what it looks like when it's done. And then I just take my pizza pan here. I can have this one linked down below. I've had this one forever. It's very affordable and cheap. Non-stick, it works great. Then I'm just spreading out my pizza dough here. I do like to pre-bake my dough. I put this at 400 degrees for about 7 to 8 minutes. So I do a little pre-baking, and then I will top it with the chicken. I shared this buffalo chicken recipe in my last freezer meals video, so that is actually why I didn't show this at the beginning. This was a freezer meal, but this is just 3 chicken breasts, 1/2 cup of buffalo sauce, a tablespoon of ranch seasoning, and you're just going to throw that into your crock pot and cook it on high for about 3 to 4 hours. I will have that video linked down below if you want to actually go watch it. But then we are headed back over, so this is the pre-baked pizza crust after it had been in the oven for about 7 to 8 minutes. I just spread a little bit of that ranch sauce over it, and then I'm topping it with all of that buffalo chicken. If you want this to be a little bit spicier, feel free to add in more buffalo sauce, but I would say this is more of a mild buffalo chicken pizza. My kids will eat this. They have said that it's spicy before, but overall, most of the time they will eat it. So I would say it's fairly kid-friendly for a buffalo chicken pizza. Yes, it has a little bit of spice, but it's nothing too overpowering. I topped it with some Fiesta blend cheese, a little bit of ranch on top, and then I baked this for probably another like 12 minutes or so. I do like to put butter on the edges of my crust. I just feel like it makes it so delicious. You can also add a little bit of garlic salt onto the edges of the crust if you want that flavor on there, but I just did butter on this particular day. But this is definitely a crowd pleaser meal, definitely something I've made many times, and my husband really likes this one. Alright, you guys, that is going to wrap up today's video. I really hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you all in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.